Welcome once again to Vision in Action Live. We have a presentation today on lifestyle fulfillment planning and a discussion today with Morry Zelcovitch, brainwave entrainment engineer and creator of the Morry method. Welcome, Mr. Zelcovitch. I'm Jim Boswell. I'm your host and the author of Lifelong Fulfillment, Take Charge of Your Life. Today's presentation will be on lifestyle fulfillment planning, follow on to our fulfillment plan prerequisites from last week. You can see those here on this page in the gray. Those are the prerequisites of who you are and what you want, your likes, dislikes, wants, demotivators, accessing your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and how do you determine what you don't know, the Johari window. Today, we're going to focus on building your plans based on the knowledge you created last week. So we're going to look at brainstorming our preferred interests, activities, and relationships. We're going to look at how to evaluate resources and constraints. We're going to look at priority planning objectives, and we're going to talk about living and working your plan, which includes experiment, test, research, and learning, integrating those results into revised objectives, and refreshing those objectives periodically and on demand. So in brainstorming, you need to follow this process, and I recommend you do it in a quiet space without interruptions when you're well rested and you're comfortable. Simply put, sit there and imagine 20 ideas, activities, possessions, investments, enrichments, or desires that really are important to you to be happy or fulfilled. Don't worry about any limits. Don't worry about constraints. Don't worry about anybody else's judgment right now. Those really do not apply, and they will squelch your ability to generate the 20 quality points that you're going to. Write them all down on a clean piece of paper as you develop them. Now, once you've done that, take those 20 and prioritize those items on a scale of 1 to 20, with 1 being the most valued and 20 being the least valued. So we're going to take that once you've done it and use the Pareto rule to designate the top 4, items 1 through 4, as the preferred items on your list. And you're going to want to log this into your brainstorm worksheet, which you'll see in just a minute. Further, after that, now we go look at resources and constraints. And we identify 5 preliminary resource and constraints and timelines for each of the 4 Paretoized objectives we have. So this is your brainstorm worksheet. On the left-hand side is the 4 out of the 20. And on the right side is your initial impressions of resources, constraints, and timelines. And you do 5 in each of those, of which, based on the Pareto idea, there is 1 item in each of those that's key. So let's keep moving forward. So now we develop priority plan objectives. So we take our first top 4 objectives in the lifestyle planning worksheet. We need to identify the strategic and tactical constraints on those objectives, which we have done. And now we're going to look at research, knowledge, and experience required to execute those. So we'll look at money, we'll look at time, we'll look at what you know today and what you don't know, and we're going to draft a plan with those actions and dates. The goals are going to be based around the SMART idea: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And these come from goalsetting.org/SMART goals if you want to review that. The goals also should have backup plan positions operating to the ABC plan. The A plan being your priority plan, the backup is your B plan, and a crisis is your C plan. If all else fails, you're in crisis mode. If just a little fails with the plan, you can drop to your backup plan. So let's see how that will work. Here's an example we've created on a person who's going through this process, and they have 2 crazy ideas. One is, I want to get a PhD, and I want to learn to skydive. So we look at the resources. If you're doing skydiving, you probably need to be reasonably physically fit. If you're a PhD, you need to know that you have a consuming interest to do that. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit of a long haul and a lot of work. You look at things like constraints, training, accreditation, how much money. Sometimes if you're in a family situation, do you have time to even do this? And how much time would it take? And again, how much expense? You need to look at the research portion of this. You're not going to know everything about your fondest dream, so you need to read up to qualify that interest. So that might actually be number one on your hit parade of to-do items, is to do the research to validate the rest of this worksheet. So you might do that in the library. You might talk to jump school graduates and trainers for the skydiving. Certainly, you'd want to find some PhD that did the PhD and, pick their brains, so to speak, about, well, why did you do it? And how long did it take? And what were the speed bumps along the way? And congratulations, by the way, you did it. Or if you didn't finish it, well, what happened? And then you create an action plan. So your action plan is the end goal. And that is, you want to graduate jump school. You might need to do 4 jumps by a certain period of time and 10 jumps by another certain period of time. And you plan those with some dates based on the research you've done, the constraints and the resources that you have to bring to bear. Same thing with the PhD. You develop a plan, you apply to college, you matriculate, you finish your training, and you engage from there in work based on your PhD. So these are ideas about how to structure it. Your particular situation, this spreadsheet is very flexible. You can use it however you want to, but we encourage you to look at the issues of resources, constraints, the fact that you're going to have to do some research, and then you've got an action plan goal, and you need to make it specific by timing it. Okay? And these are only 2 of the 4 goals. We've left goal 3 and goal 4 off of this worksheet. You should continue and go ahead and do goal 3 and goal 4. Now, let's say, for instance, from a perspective, this PhD looks kind of hard to do. Item 1, the skydive, is doable, you think? Item 3, following the PhD, which is item 2, well, if 2 is simply too difficult for whatever reason, go focus your efforts now on item 3 and item 4 and make them a priority if PhD is too difficult. And retrench your thought process about the PhD. Why were you getting it? What was it supposed to deliver for you? And reinsert it as a priority if it still makes sense. Figure out a way to make it happen, or whatever roadblock you had can be resolved. And then concentrate on that. So you can see, you can revise this plan. You can revise the 4 top priorities pretty readily. And you've got backup in case one of them fails to be achievable for whatever reason. And you can keep moving forward. So you need to live and work the plan. Part of it is, once you've established a goal, there's tactical things you have to do. Like, you got to make your first jump. You've got to get matriculated at a university. So again, what I said was, if priority 1 is too constrained or too difficult, or 2, you just simply move the follow-on priority up and keep working. At this point, it's not terribly effective to go back and regenerate your entire plan from the brainstorm session all the way up. Then you need to experiment. You need to get some coaching, do some research, self-educated. You need to ask experts, talk to practitioners, read authoritative sources to validate and grow your success at those 4 priority items. Don't overreact to your success and your failures. Have some patience. This is a long process sometimes. And if your initial vision becomes wrong after you've taken a run at it, you can rerun the development process again from the ground up, starting with brainstorming. But be persistent with these first four and see if you can generate some progress and more of that progress steady stated over time. Work your initiatives, be flexible, recognize your progress, and pat yourself on the back and celebrate it. What you learn here as you do your first plan in your early 20s, you'll be doing this again and again and again because your priorities are going to change. The system allows you to do that. And so you create a constant flow of priority successes and goals being met, and you learn from those where you have the difficulty. And you don't have that problem later on as you do other plans. One thing you do need to do is conduct routine progress checks and reintegrate this plan as necessary. After you do your initial brainstorming, you want to take a look at what you came up with about 3 months later, just to simply settle it in your mind that your initial plan is pretty solid and that you can periodically check on it from then on. And it's a reality check too. Is it making me happy or fulfilled as I start out? Does this process work? Are these things that you like, you don't like, what you want to keep and what you want to drop? You want to factor those into the feedback loop so that the goal you set gets informed, and it will inform your process as you create new goals. I encourage you to write it down and retain and file these things for reference because people change their minds, circumstances change, and you may need to go back to it. And most of us, even with good brain power and good memory retention, will not always remember everything. And then at the end of that, once you've gone through the first four, now it's time for a new set of plan objectives, a new strategy, new tactics, whatever stage of the process is needed. So if you did this at 22, maybe by 25, 26, you need to replan. That's entirely okay. That's the way this works. So reset that plan as you need to, and you can go all the way back to brainstorming a new set of priorities and delete and get rid of priority Pareto objectives as is appropriate when they don't work. Resets. Well, they happen in milestones in life because things change. And don't be afraid of resetting if it stalls or it just feels like you've hit that point of diminishing returns or it just plain feels wrong. And again, write it down, retain everything. Your files will be very productive for you downstream as you move on to other new goals and other achievements. Happy hunting. So live and work the plan. That's all we can say about this. Use the feedback to focus your progress, your evaluations, your revisioning. Save it. And now you truly have what's called a closed loop continuous improvement process. And you want to keep that mindset. Your first successes will be great. Your first failures will be informative. But don't get upset about it all. Just keep plugging along. Thanks for your time and attention on this. So remember, it's a process end to end from every stage in your life. You do your own lifestyle development planning, and the worksheets are available to you in the book or homegrown if you want, or in the newsletter for this podcast. Use Pareto, return on investment, time, SMART goals, ABC strategy, and other things to keep you in focus. Work the plan. Review and revise your initial one in 90 days and periodically thereafter, and get all the help you can from lifelongfulfillment.com. Now's the time in our program when we entertain the different perspectives of people who are living self-directed lives and point solution experts whose expertise enhances lifelong fulfillment. So please join me today in welcoming Morry Zelcovitch, an honor student in psychology and sociology at York University, currently a brainwave entrainment engineer and the creator of the Morry method. Mr. Zelcovitch, welcome to Vision in Action Live. We're happy to have you.
Thanks for having me, Jim, and please call me Morry. Mr.
Okay,
Zelcovitch
it'll be
was my
Morry, and
dad, as
I'm
they say.
I'm Jim at this end. Okay.
Great, thank you.
So maybe what you could do for our audience, Morry, would be to expand on that brief introduction for the things that I might have missed. Could you do that?
Certainly. So, hey, everybody, and thank you for being here. I appreciate the stage and I appreciate your attention. So, basically, I spent the first 40 years of my life wanting to be dead. I have 6 suicide attempts under my belt, but it took 6 of them to realize that if I really wanted to die, probably one should have been enough. When I did realize that, I still had a problem because my life was a misery. I would kind of fluctuate between serious depression and what I call super depression. And this was my life for 40 years. I used to wake up every morning. I'd stand on my bed. I'd open my windows. I'd cross my fingers and I would wish I would see mushroom clouds. Because if I saw mushroom clouds, that would mean that I don't have to live through another day. I remember I had an affirmation that worked beautifully, unfortunately. I must have said it out loud 100 times a day, thought it in my head thousands of times a day. Life is a disease for which there is no cure but death. And that was my life for the better part of 40 years. I realized that I couldn't die. And when I realized I couldn't die, or at least I couldn't die when I wanted to, then I had to find a way to live. And that's really what started me on my journey. I tried the usual suspects that most people try to change their lives, like drugs, alcohol, sex addiction. All of those things made my life so much worse. So much worse. Then I decided, well, maybe I need to see doctors. So I went and I saw psychiatrists and psychologists and GPs and neurological specialists, and none of them helped me either. Back in those days, they didn't give pills for everything. They
Right.
actually told me, I remember that it was kind of funny. At the time, it was sad, but now I kind of reflect on it. It's funny. They all said, you're coping really well. So apparently, not succeeding and killing myself is a good coping strategy. So they didn't give me anything to help me. They didn't even tell me to try things. So then the next step, of course, was to try things. So I started researching different products, different services, different techniques, hypnosis, EMDR, breathing techniques, tapping, the thousands. You'd be amazed how many techniques and technologies are out there to help people with their mood and their attitude. I tried what I thought was all of them because over 40 years I'm trying everything under the sun. And again, nothing worked for me. I
Mhm.
finally, near the end of my search, I came across something called brainwave entrainment. And by then, I was already researching at a place I like to call the paper internet. So that would be a library for those of you who have no idea what I just meant. And I was reading research papers, things on neurology, neurochemistry, behavior, psychology, sociology, anything and everything I could get my hands on, even quantum physics, anything that might have something to do with my perception and why I felt the way I felt. When I found brainwave entrainment, it ticked all the boxes. But when I tried it, again, no results. Lots of people do it, lots of different companies, lots of different individuals. Every brand, every variety I found, none of them worked, but they should have. And that's what inspired me to create what's now known as the Morry method. It's a varying, growing, evolutionary technique or set of techniques, some of which haven't even been born yet, that help my brain to recalibrate itself, to reconstitute itself. One of the things I learned, and then I'll get off my horse, I promise. But one of the things I learned was that my thoughts, which were negative and expecting the worst all the time, actually created brainwave activity. And that brainwave activity created chemistry in my brain, things like neurotransmitters, endorphins, and hormones. And it's the combination or the recipe of all of these things that actually created my experience.
Mhm.
So if you're happy, if you're sad, if you're excited, if you're bored, all of that you only feel when your brain creates the chemistry that allows you to feel it.
Mhm.
And I slowly started piecing together my original audio recording. It was an MP3 file. When I tried it, eventually, because I was afraid of trying it at first, it took me a month. But when I did try it, it quieted the voices. I had thousands of voices in my head. And for the first time in my life, for 5 minutes, they were gone. And I knew I was onto something. And now I help thousands and thousands of people all over the world to either avoid what I went through, get out of what I went through, or even get out of their own personal hell. And it's all done by putting on headphones, closing their eyes, hitting play, and having a nap if they want.
Wow. Wow. So it sounds like is this a common occurrence, Maury, in your experience with people in the population?
As far as mental health issues,
Yes, sir. Yeah.
yes, I'm again, I can't make diagnosis or prognosis or anything like that, but I
Right.
would say more people suffer from mental health issues than any other issue on the planet. And that's saying a lot because hunger is a big problem. Clean water is a big problem.
Sure.
There's all kinds of things that are real problems. But I think mental health is probably at the root of most of them.
Oh, I see. Okay. So it's something we're just now learning to address, and it sounds like you're on the forefront of it.
I'm one of the things on the forefront. The nice thing about humanity is that there's so many brilliant people and there's so many smart ideas and there's so many techniques. What works for one person doesn't work for another. So it's really good to have a lot of people with a lot of different techniques and technologies out there because it means that people don't have to lose hope. Just because, like I did, I went through 40 years, I ended up having to create my own technique.
Right.
But in most cases, the wheel already exists. It's simply a matter of finding the one that fits.
Okay. And if I just put on some headphones and, started listening to your method,
Uh-huh.
uh, what would I really be experiencing? What is it doing for me? Can we dig into that a little bit?
Sure. So the process of entrainment, I'm sure you can relate to. Do you like music at all?
Oh, I love it.
Okay,
Absolutely.
beautiful. So if you're listening to your favorite band or your favorite type of music, do you ever notice that sometimes you're just tapping your toes mindlessly or you're bopping your head back and forth mindlessly?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a form of entrainment, actually.
Okay.
So entrainment is a natural process that everybody's experienced, or almost everybody's experienced. I suppose I can't speak for everybody. But that's a reflex. It's something called the frequency following response, and that occurs in every more or less healthy brain.
Hmm.
It follows a pattern. So, you follow the drum beat, you follow the guitar, you follow the piano, violin, whatever it is, it elicits a response because of the vibratory energy it elicits. So, we don't actually hear things. Nobody's hearing me talk right now. Nobody's hearing you talk, and nobody has ever heard you speak. No one's ever heard me speak either. If anyone is at home or at the office and they can put their hands over the speakers of their phone or their laptop or their computer, they'll feel vibration when I talk. And
Right.
that's actually what's created is vibratory energy that gets interpreted by the brain. So it passes through all these bones, they vibrate, little hairs vibrate, all kinds of things vibrate, they create electrical impulses. With brainwave entrainment, it's a matter of pulsing something on and off so many times a second, depending on how many times your neuron pulses an electric impulse. So it doesn't pulse like a heart pulses,
Hmm.
but it pulses an electric impulse. And depending on how many times a second it pulses that electric impulse, that dictates the state it's in. So when you've probably heard of things like alpha, beta, theta, gamma, delta.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All those is delineations. They're areas of how many times the neuron's pulsing on and off. That's all that means. But the unique thing is, depending on the location in the brain where the neuron is, how many times it's pulsing, that dictates the kind of neurochemistry that's produced. Now, some neurochemistry, believe it or not, is produced in the gut. But brainwave entrainment has, because the gut, the heart, and the brain, which all have neurons, all have brain cells, are connected. So you affect one, you affect them all. And that's what happens. So you put on a pair of headphones or bone conduction headphones like these, and you hit play and you put it at more or less a comfortable volume, comfortable, more or less a spoken volume, conversational volume.
Mhm.
And the different effects that I've incorporated, the resonances, the vibrations and energy, create a state where your neurons, your brain cells, are inspired to follow the frequency I'm presenting to you. So you might hear something like bop, 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 bop. And your neurons, after a little while, will start mimicking or, monkey see, monkey doing that kind of pulse.
Right.
So I can help to influence the kind of neural chemistry your brain creates. And the beautiful thing about that and brainwave entrainment, when it's properly engineered, is that it allows for people who thought this is their life, nothing can change, to actually allow them to feel differently. So they may feel all kinds of things, they may feel nothing. I had a friend who ran one of my sessions. That's what I call it, running a session. So he ran one of my sessions. He laid down in a chair with a head support. He closed his eyes. He had the headphones on. And when it was over, he said, Morry, I felt nothing. It was about a half an hour recording. He said, it felt like half an hour. I heard the pulses, blah, 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 blah. I heard the background, shh. I heard everything you said I'd hear, and I feel nothing, nothing at all. So I said, well, you know what? Clean water, clean air. The only two things that are good for everybody. And he went home. And
Mhm.
about 2 or 3 hours later, he gave me a phone call and said, the weirdest thing happened on the way home. I asked him what. Well, normally, he's a bit of a nervous driver, right? And he told me that whenever he gets cut off, and that happens a lot in the city where we live, a lot of very aggressive drivers. So every time he gets cut off, he gets mad and he yells and he screams and he flips them the bird and all kinds of stuff. But when he got home, about an hour later, he realized that he was cut off twice on the way home, didn't react either time.
Wow.
So that's the point. I normally tell my clients, I go, look, when was the last time you noticed the elbow on your left arm? Most people will say, unless they have arthritis or something, they'll say either right now or the last time I bumped it into something,
Yeah.
right? And
Uh-huh.
it gets that, but people say it like falls asleep. Is that tingling sensation or whatever?
Mhm.
So my point is, we don't notice, or we're not brought up to notice, we're not trained to notice when things are functioning normally. He didn't
Yeah,
notice
I
the
think that's a
benefit.
fair statement. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he didn't notice the benefit he got because it was functioning normally. Why would he notice? We're taught to notice pain, discomfort, anger, blah, blah, blah. Well, he noticed it later when it clued in that, wait a minute, I didn't get angry. What's going on here? That must have done something.
Right.
So that's always a nice experience to relate to people.
So, if he did that, does he, taking that gentleman in perspective, does he have to then come back and do it again and again?
He
Uh,
doesn't have to come back, but that's an excellent question. Yeah, he does have to do it more regularly. It's kind of like exercise.
I see. Okay.
So if you
So,
don't do it regularly, it's likely to go back to your baseline.
okay. So we're retraining the brain, so to speak.
Sure. I have a recording, for instance, that I use every night when I go to sleep. My parents are both gone. They both left last year. And unfortunately, they were very sick for a very long period of time. And my brother and I took turns on a daily basis driving into the city they live in and taking care of them during the day.
Right.
So it was a lot of stress, a lot of anger, a lot of just bad stuff. My dad had Alzheimer's and my mom had a condition where her lungs were hardening. So it was not a good situation. There was a lot of suffering.
Right.
And my wife was telling me after a while, she finally broke down and said, Morry, you're acting out when you sleep. So you can imagine if I was lying next to you and suddenly in the middle of the night, I started screaming at the top of my lungs. That would be very scary. And I was even punching the air. And a
Right.
couple of times I hit her.
Yeah.
And when I found out that, I said, what an idiot I am. I have this technology. I created it. I'm not even using it. Since I've been using it, I don't scream. I don't yell. I don't have bad dreams. I don't act out.
Right.
And I know the recording is responsible because last summer I was at a friend's cottage and I forgot to use it one night. And that night I started acting out. And then the next night I used it again and I was fine.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So is it one recording or different recordings for different effects you want to, or problems you think you have that you want to, get some control over?
That's another excellent question. I have 34 systems right now, which are series of recordings.
Wow.
I have another 6 that are being released any day now in the area of peak performance. I have another 7 of those ready to go later on. And I'm currently working on 50 plus other systems, all of which have proprietary techniques and technology that I've developed.
I see. Okay.
So brainwave entrainment's interesting because it can give you much more than you expected or more than your intended purpose was, because the brain is the central processing unit of your life. If it doesn't pass through your brain, you don't know it's there. So you could walk up to me, slap my face, my head could fly off to the side, fly back. If my brain doesn't create chemistry that is coded to let me know that my face was slapped and I moved, I wouldn't know.
Right.
Even though my field of vision changed everything, I wouldn't be aware of it.
Right.
So there are generalizations you can make, but I can make systems specific to an individual, to a team, to a totally generalized systems as well.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, I used to be one of those people that woke up, in my case as a submariner,
Yeah.
running to the collision alarm. And I could wake up in the middle of the night, be out of bed and moving before I even knew what happened. So I can see what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, the brain is a interesting, powerful thing, and we need to find ways to help it to be calm and sedate. It's natural to be happy. It's natural to be calm. That's why these things feel good. And when we don't feel good, it's not a bad thing. It's just simply a sign that we're not doing or thinking the right things.
Right, right. Now, if people are coming to you as you sort of work through this problem yourself, they probably have more than just one issue. So, should we regard the Morry method as, well, this can be somewhat targeted, but it might in fact cure the other issue that you think you have that, maybe you think is ancillary and that's not your primary function. Are there spin-offs to engaging this method?
So I don't make claims. So I would not claim to cure anything.
Okay.
Okay, that's a rabbit hole I'm not interested in going down. People ask me questions like that all the time, and I say, look, that's why I offer a guarantee. You use it properly, and then you tell me. You're asking the right question, you're just asking the wrong person. Everybody is unique unto themselves. So a lot of my systems, I get testimonials all the time, and I rarely get one testimonial that's similar to another.
So, all
Everybody
right.
has their own stuff they deal with, right? And their brain takes care of it because we're taking care of the brain. The brain then takes care of whatever the issue is. You're your own expert. I'm not your expert.
Right.
But that being said, there are specialty systems available. I have a system that doctors and clinicians use for Alzheimer's.
Oh, really? Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was actually written up in a book called The End of Alzheimer's by Dr. Dale Bredesen.
Okay.
And when that happened, all of a sudden I started making sales and I was wondering where they're coming from. And then I found out from one of the clients who called to ask me some questions. But yeah, the Brazilian military uses my work to help train their military police as part of the education there. There's been some independent research done by Jamaican University on pre and post math exam anxiety. The
Okay.
brain's amazing. Your brain is amazing. My brain is amazing. Everybody's brain is amazing. So
Okay.
it's simply a matter of giving it the freedom to go ahead and do that.
So you probably have a website where people can contact you?
If people want to contact me, the best way, because they can pick up some free samples if they'd like to try it as well, would be for my link tree. So that would probably be Linktree, linktr.ee/Morry Zelco, MorryZelco.
Okay. And from there, they can sample it and then
Yeah, there's
determine.
sample recordings, there's websites, there's a product page. It doesn't have all my products, but they can see an array of 9 or 10 of my products. And they can learn a little bit more about me there as well. And if they wanted to have a meeting or talk, there's a calendar link. There's pretty much everything there.
Great. Great. Well, Morry, this has been hugely instructive and very different. And I want to thank you for joining us today. and sharing your thoughts with our audience. I'm sure you're going to be hearing from some of them.
I
So
appreciate you. Thank you.
we'll let you go, and best of luck on all of this.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you, everybody out there. Have a nice day.
And I want to thank our guest today, Mr. Morry Zelcovitch, for his insight about brain entrainment. Vision in Action Live podcasts are every week, and the episodes are announced in advance. Thank you for tuning in. We hope it speaks to you and your particular situation. Check out the book, Lifelong Fulfillment, the newsletters, collateral material, and this podcast at lifelongfulfillment.com. I'm Jim Boswell. I'm your host. Comments and questions are welcome at the website and at jim@lifelongfulfillment.com. Thank you for watching. We look forward to seeing you again on another episode of Vision in Action Live. Until then, smooth sailing.